All right, so
lackluster performance.
I mean, where to start, Diego? I mean,
Yeah,
first of
where to
all, I
start?
mean, it's it's this genius move from you because you lost Clasico, but you also took your son to the game and you post all these beautiful pictures, and so like we can't go too crazy. We can't, we have some feelings. We're all human. We saw the images of your son. You're like, oh man, and
Especially
we
you.
can't go too hard on him now. Like it's this
I
beautiful
knew I'd get
Instagram
you.
video of his son is smiling in the stands and they're having a special father-son moment. Like, is it ethical for me to even roll ours tonight? I don't know. A very genius move from you to put up it's like a defense
Thank
shield,
you.
like your son. But I'm genuinely happy for Lolo, and like, look, a loss is a loss, but I'm sure he'll never forget those scenes, and I'm sure like he will see many, many special nights at the Camp Nou, and he'll remember this one and say, the first one, no matter what, was special. I went with my dad and all this. So, all right, now that we got that out of the way,
Yes,
um, I
the nitty gritty.
so I was trying to take mental notes for all the things you were saying, and there was part of me, and I mentioned this on the Management podcast last night. I haven't felt that Classico anxiety in a long time, and I don't. It could be a combination that Barca are not as strong as they used to be. It also just, and I'm not even necessarily heading into those Clásicos confident as a Real Madrid fan. It's just kind of like, it's just a little bit more subdued now. You know what I mean? You and I have been talking about how the Clásicos have just less tension now. Maybe it's because there's a lot of players who just haven't been a part of that Clásico history and the bloodbaths of years prior. Those figures have been, peeled away from us over the years. Two who are, iconic, Ramos and Messi. This was the first one without them. And so we just kind of waiting for this to blossom into something new. And I don't think we're that far away from it, because when you look, and a lot of this podcast, I will actually come to the defense of Barcelona, or at least sing praises, or at least send a message to Kuliza. I don't think you're that bad of a state. I think you're in a bad state for sure. But I think if you give this a couple years, when you have, like Diego, I saw a lot of criticism of Frankie de Jong this morning when I woke up.
Yes.
And in my head, I'm like, this is recency bias and unfair. To me, de Jong is one of Barca's best players this season. I think he's had a really good season. Sure, he did not have a great game last night, but come on, like, we can't just do this thing where we have a game and then all of a sudden all the memories of what happens before that gets erased and we start to be critical of this guy. I think he's been really good this season, and if you look at the nucleus of him and Pedri and Gavi, who's another one who did not have a great game last night, but come on, he's just a kid, and we just haven't seen much of him at all, so we can't really say either way, but he was good with Spain. So you have those three, plus you have the Ansu and Memphis, the dyad there in attack. And you have young defenders who are still grooming. Like, I don't think it's crazy to think that if you just stick with this in like 2 years, and once the budget comes back, you can add players to this. I think this is like a team that's maybe 3-5 years away from contending on a Champions League level again. But that's just something maybe to table that. But I don't think it's like doom and gloom. And when you look at this Clásico, I don't think Barcelona were better, and I don't know if Real Madrid were better either, but I actually think a draw would have been a fair result in this game. And I think, Barca had their huge chances. Real Madrid had their huge chances. Neither team, I think, were at the peak of their powers. And I will say, like, and I mentioned this on the Management podcast last night, you watching at the stadium, so you don't get to see it, and you're in Spain.
Yeah.
But here in North America, we had the ESPN coverage, right? And so I thought ESPN did a really good job of hyping the game, because they made this like video montage of those hype clips before a Clásico, where they like go and show clips from the years past. So they show everything from the damage that Messi and Ronaldinho have done in the past, to the goals that Cristiano has scored, the goals that Raul has scored, Zidane has scored, and they go back and like the Supercopa from 2017, and then the fights between Mu and Pep, and they just made this really epic montage of the Clásico. And like, this is good shit. Like, I'm hyped now. I'm watching this. I'm really hyped. But then you watch the game, and then towards the end of the game, one of the ESPN commentators was like, well, if this Clásico has taught us anything, it's that these two teams are not at their best anymore. And you start to remember like the good old days of the Clásico and how much, and I was like, joking on Twitter, like before before the game, you see Koeman and Ancelotti smiling and hugging. I'm like, fuck this shit, man. Let me some blood. I want some blood in here. And you see, like, you know, Vinicius and Piqué, they have their arm around each other. You have all these nice things that Piqué said about Vinicius before the game, kind of shocked me. I mean, I was flattered and happy, I guess, but I was like, you know, but there was part of my soul that was like, okay, I'm waiting for the dig. I want a little bit of a poke here, poke the bear a little bit. Piqué, he was being too nice to Vinny. And so, I think we're going to look back on this Clasico era, whether it's like I can actually say like the last 5 games, because the one before that 5th game was the 5-1 at the Camp Nou where you guys beat us, and that was when we had Lopetegui, and then he got sacked shortly after. Since then, it's been watered down, I think, but I think we're going to look back at this era and think, well, that was kind of the calm before the storm. I feel like at some point, these, you know, the Vinicius Ansu and the Pedri, De Jong, and Camavinga, the Fedes, it will turn into something. But I don't think we haven't gotten there yet. But I feel like if we have a little bit more patience, this can blossom into something.
Yeah, I